All right, so this is the key to section 12.1 part B. And in this case, if you look at all these problems here, you're multiplying all these expressions. So you're going to end up using, for this section, you end up using the product rule. So the product rule. All right, and so the product rule, remember, says that basically when you multiply like bases in words, when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. So when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. All right, so in this case, you have x to the second power. Go ahead and expand this. All right, so you get x to the second power times x to the fourth power times x. Now remember, there's no exponent is understood to be a 1, so that's a 1 right here. So 2 plus 4 plus 1 is 7, so it'll be x to the 7th power. All right, over here, now see here you have, if you look at this expression right here, 3x, the coefficient is 3, and here, negative 2x cubed, the coefficient is negative 2. So the coefficients, you just multiply the coefficients. So you got to think of these as coefficients. So 3 times the negative 2 is a negative 6, and now I have x times x cubed. This is what I have, x times x cubed, and that's where I'm going to use the product rule. So in a multiply like basis, I add exponents. That's a 3 right here. So 1 plus 3 is 4. So I get negative 6, x to the 4th power. Number 3. All right, number 3, you have x cubed. You have two variables here. You have x and y. So deal with the x cubes first. Let's put them in alphabetical order. So x squared times x cubed. So you multiply in like bases. You're going to add those exponents. 2 plus 3 is 5. So remember, it's kind of like saying x squared means x times x, and x cubed means x times x times x. So you have 5 factors of x, so this is x to the 5th. All right, but you don't want to do it this way. You want to use the rule you now know, the product rule. So there'll be x to the 5th, and then y to the 1st times y to the 1st is y to the 2nd power. 1 plus 1 is 2. All right, number 4. You have this coefficient here is understood to be a 1. That's 1x to the 5th. So 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times negative 3 is a negative 15. So x to the 5th times x cubed times x squared. So 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. So I get negative 15, x to the 10th power. So all you're doing here is using the product rule with the variables. Okay, here you're multiplying two expressions. This coefficient is a negative 3. This coefficient is a negative 2. Negative 3, see this multiplication right here. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. M to the 1st power times m to the 5th power. So that's where we're going to use the product rule. So when you multiply like bases, you add exponents. 1 plus 5 is 6. I get m to the 6th power. N cubed times n to the 4th is n to the 7th. 3 plus 4 is 7. Again, make sure your exponents look like exponents. Number 6, the coefficient in this expression is negative 6. The coefficient in this one is 6. Negative 6 times 6 is a negative 36. And let's deal with the variables. So that's where we use the product rule. So a to the 3rd power times a to the 1st power is a to the 4th power. B to the 2nd power times b to the 1st power is b to the 3rd power. So b cubed. Okay, number 7. This coefficient is 1. This coefficient is 1. This is a 3. This is a 2. So 1 times 3 times 2 is 6. All right, a to the 1st times a to the 2nd times a to the 1st. There's no factors of a here. So you're just going to add your exponents. 1 plus 2 plus 1. So 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus this 1 is 4. So that's a to the 4th. All right, now the factors of b. B to the 1st times b to the 1st. There's no factor b here, but there is a factor b here, so b to the 1st. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So that's b to the 3rd power. Okay, over here, this coefficient is 15. This coefficient is a negative 1, because remember, the only thing that's being raised to the 4th power is x. negative 1 times a positive 1. So 15 times a negative 1 is a negative 15. A negative 15 times this positive 1 here is a negative 15. All right, so x to the 7th times x to the 4th times x to the 2nd. 7 plus 4 is 11. 11 plus 2 is 13. Number 9, this coefficient is 4. This coefficient is negative 2. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. X cubed times x to the 5th, that's where we can use the product rule. 3 plus 5 is 8. All right, number 10, this coefficient is 1/2. And this coefficient is 8. So half of 8 is 4. So I'm going to get 4 y to the 4th times y to the 2nd. That's why I use the product rule. When you multiply like bases, you add exponents. So that'll be y to the 6th. All right, so that takes care of worksheet part B. And that's where we had to use the product rule.